I spent the better part of 20 years reaching for steel brackets every time I needed a strong connection. Corner braces, angle irons, joist hangers, you name it. If it was metal and came in a bag with screws, I trusted it. And honestly, why wouldn't I? Steel is stronger than wood. That's not an opinion, that's just physics. So it made perfect sense to me that bolting a piece of steel across a joint would make it stronger than anything I could do with wood alone. Then, about 6 years ago, I built a workbench with heavy-duty steel corner brackets at every joint. Good ones, too. 14-gauge steel, number 10 screws, everything torqued down tight. And within 2 seasons, I started hearing creaks. By the 3rd year, I could wiggle the legs by hand. The screws had loosened, the holes had wallowed out, and a couple of the brackets had actually bent the wood fibers around the screw holes into little craters. Meanwhile, I had an old saw bench in the corner of my shop that my grandfather built sometime in the 1950s using nothing but mortise and tenon joints and hide glue. No metal anywhere. That thing was rock solid, hadn't moved a fraction of an inch in over 60 years. That contradiction bothered me enough to start digging into the engineering behind it. And what I found genuinely surprised me. In the situations that matter most to woodworkers, movement, time, moisture, and shock, a properly fitted wooden joint doesn't just hold its own against a steel bracket, it flat out wins. Today, I'm going to walk you through exactly why, one engineering principle at a time. And stick around to the end, because I'll show you a dead simple marking trick I learned from a timber framer that guarantees your tenons make full contact every single time. Let's get into this. What we're really talking about today is a head-to-head comparison, not wood versus steel as raw materials, because steel wins that contest every time. What we're comparing is 2 fastening systems. A steel bracket screwed to the surface of a joint versus a fitted wooden joint where the wood itself becomes the connection. And when you evaluate them as systems, the results are not what most of us would expect. To understand why fitted joinery performs the way it does, it helps to know where these techniques were pressure tested the hardest. And I'm not talking about a laboratory. I'm talking about centuries of real-world use in conditions that would destroy most modern construction. Japanese timber framers have been building with interlocking wooden joints for well over 1,000 years. These aren't decorative flourishes. Japan sits on one of the most seismically active zones on Earth. Their buildings had to survive earthquakes, typhoons, and extreme humidity cycles, all without steel fasteners. Because for most of their building history, steel was either unavailable or far too expensive to use structurally. So they developed joints that do something most modern engineers wouldn't think to ask for. Their joints flex. They absorb lateral movement instead of resisting it, and they lock tighter under the very loads that would tear a bracket loose. But this isn't exclusively a Japanese story. European timber framers in Germany, France, and England were doing similar work. The great medieval barns of England, some built in the 1200s, are still standing. Not preserved behind glass, still standing, and still in use. Early American barn builders brought these same traditions across the Atlantic, and you can still find timber-framed barns in New England and Pennsylvania that have been holding up haylofts for 250 years without a single steel connector. The common thread across all of these traditions is an engineering principle that most of us have been taught to ignore. The strongest connection isn't the one made from the strongest material. It's the one that works with the wood instead of against it. These builders understood wood not as a static material you clamp and bolt, but as a living, moving, breathing thing that needs a joint designed to move with it. That idea is the foundation for everything we're about to cover. Now let's talk about the first engineering problem with brackets, and it's a big one. Stress concentration. When you screw a steel bracket to a piece of wood, every single bit of force that joint has to handle gets funneled through a small number of tiny points, the screw holes. Think about what's actually happening at each screw. You've got a number 10 screw maybe 3/16 of an inch in diameter, and the entire shear load on that connection is being transferred through 6 or 8 of those little points. The wood fibers around each screw hole are carrying an enormous amount of force relative to their size. Now wood is remarkably strong along its grain, but it's weak in exactly the way screws exploit it. When you drive a screw perpendicular to the grain, you're asking a small cylinder of wood fibers to resist being pulled through or sheared off. Under static load, this works fine for a while. But add any kind of dynamic stress, any racking, any vibration, any seasonal movement, and those screw holes start to elongate. The fibers crush, the hole wallows out, and now your screw is sitting in a slot instead of a hole. I've seen this happen on everything from shelf brackets to deck ledger boards. The bracket is still fine. The steel didn't fail. The wood around it did, because all the force was concentrated in spots that were too small to handle it over time. A mortise and tenon joint solves this completely differently. Instead of funneling force through a handful of tiny screw holes, a properly fitted tenon distributes load across the entire surface area of the joint. Take a simple example. A 1-inch thick tenon that's 3 inches wide and 2 inches deep has roughly 22 square inches of wood-to-wood contact surface. Compare that to a steel angle bracket with 6 screws. Those 6 screws give you maybe half a square inch of total bearing surface. The mortise and tenon has roughly 44 times more area carrying the load. And that load is being transferred through direct wood-to-wood compression and shear across broad faces, not through tiny puncture points. The force at any single point in the joint is a fraction of what each screw hole has to endure. When I first did that math on the back of an envelope, I just stared at it for a minute. 44-1. And that's a conservatively sized tenon. A timber frame joint with a 2-inch by 6-inch tenon face has even more contact area. The numbers aren't even close. This is why a properly fitted mortise and tenon can handle loads that would rip a bracket right off the wood. Not because wood is stronger than steel, but because the joint distributes force so much more efficiently that the wood never gets anywhere near its failure point. By the way, if you are enjoying learning about these ancient methods, I put together something I think you will really appreciate. It is called Kenji's Workshop, and it is a collection of 100 ancient Eastern woodworking secrets for the modern craftsman. Techniques like the ones we are covering today, and a whole lot more. You can grab your copy by scanning the QR code on screen or just use the first link in the description. All right, let us keep going. Now, here's the problem that kills more bracketed joints than anything else, and it's one most people never think about until the damage is done. Seasonal wood movement. Every piece of wood in your shop, every piece of wood in your house is constantly expanding and contracting as humidity changes. A 12-inch wide white oak panel can move over a 1/4 inch across its width between summer and winter. That's not a defect. That's just what wood does. Now imagine you've got a steel bracket screwed across that joint. Steel doesn't move. Its coefficient of thermal expansion is a tiny fraction of wood's moisture-driven movement. So every time that wood swells, it's pushing against screws that won't give. Every time it shrinks, it's pulling away from screws that are locked in place. Twice a year, every year, your bracket is fighting the wood. And the wood always wins eventually, but not in a good way. The screw holes elongate. The fibers around them crush and tear. I've pulled brackets off joints after just 5 or 6 years and found the screw holes wallowed out to twice their original diameter. The bracket looked perfect. The wood underneath looked like it had been chewed on. A fitted wooden joint handles this completely differently because both halves of the joint are made from the same material. They expand and contract together at the same rate, in the same direction, if you've oriented your grain correctly. A tenon swells inside its mortise, and instead of fighting, the joint actually gets tighter. It self-adjusts. In the dry winter months, it relaxes slightly, but the mechanical interlock keeps everything aligned. This is what timber framers mean when they talk about a joint that breathes. It's not poetry, it's physics. Two pieces of the same species, with grain running in compatible directions, moving in harmony instead of fighting each other across a rigid steel bridge. This brings us to something that really changed my thinking: the difference between rigidity and flexibility under sudden load. If you've ever watched slow-motion footage of an earthquake hitting a building, you've seen this principle in action. Rigid structures resist movement until they can't, and then they fail catastrophically. Flexible structures absorb and redirect energy, and they survive. A steel bracket is rigid by design. That's supposed to be its strength. But when a sudden force hits a bracketed joint, a heavy load dropped on a table, a strong wind gust against a pergola, a seismic tremor through a foundation, that rigidity means the force has nowhere to go except straight into the screw holes. There's no give, no flex, no energy absorption. The full impact hits those tiny stress points we talked about earlier, and something has to break. Usually it's the wood. A well-fitted wooden joint has just enough flex to absorb sudden energy. The wood fibers compress slightly under impact, distribute the force across broad surfaces, and then spring back. Japanese temple builders figured this out 1,000 years ago. Their multi-story pagodas use interlocking joints that allow each floor to sway independently during an earthquake. The famous 5-story pagoda at the Horyuji Temple has been standing since roughly 670 AD, 1,350 years, in one of the most earthquake-prone regions on Earth. Not one steel bracket, not one nail, and it's still there. Meanwhile, modern steel-framed buildings built to current seismic codes have collapsed in earthquakes that the Horyuji Pagoda has sailed through. Flexibility beats rigidity when things move. Every single time. Now here's an engineering trick that's hidden inside every good mortise and tenon, and most people never even realize it's there. Self-tightening under compression. When you load a properly oriented mortise and tenon joint, the weight actually makes the joint tighter. Here's why. If you cut a tenon so that its wide face is oriented to receive the load in compression, the force pushes the tenon harder into the walls of the mortise. The more weight you put on it, the more friction you generate across those broad wood-to-wood surfaces. The joint literally gets stronger as you load it. Compare that to a bracket under the same load. More weight means more shear force on the screws. More shear force means more stress on those tiny bearing points. More stress means faster failure. The bracket gets weaker under load, the joint gets stronger. This is the same principle that makes a wedge-through tenon so incredibly effective. You drive a hardwood wedge, usually something dense like white oak or hard maple, into a kerf cut in the end of the tenon after it passes through the mortise. That wedge spreads the tenon inside the mortise, creating a mechanical dovetail effect that physically cannot pull out. The more you load it, the tighter it locks. No screw on earth does that. The last round in this matchup is the long game, and this is where brackets lose worst of all. Steel corrodes. Even galvanized or coated brackets will eventually rust in any environment with moisture, and that includes the inside of your shop if you live anywhere with real humidity. When a bracket rusts, it stains the surrounding wood, weakens the metal, and creates a rough, expanded surface that puts even more stress on the screw holes. I've torn apart outdoor projects after just 8 or 10 years and found brackets that were rusted to half their original thickness. A wooden joint doesn't corrode, it can't. And if it does eventually wear or loosen after decades of service, you can repair it. A timber framer can pull a tenon, clean up the surfaces, add a shim or recut the joint, and put it back together for another century of service. Try that with a bracket that's been screwed into wallowed-out holes in split wood. You're not repairing that. You're replacing it. The repairability factor alone is why so many timber-framed buildings have survived for centuries. They weren't built to be permanent. They were built to be maintainable. And that's a fundamentally different engineering philosophy than the modern approach of bolt it tight and hope for the best. Let me share some patterns I've noticed in my own work and in shops I've visited, habits most of us fall into, that these traditional methods handle very differently. The first pattern is reaching for brackets as a strength solution without considering the failure mode. I did this for years. Joint feels a little weak? Add a bracket. But I was solving a strength problem by introducing a stress concentration problem, a corrosion problem, and a wood movement problem all at once. The traditional approach is to rethink the joint geometry itself. Make the tenon wider, add a haunch, change the shoulder angle, solve the strength problem with wood, not with metal bolted to the surface. The second pattern is trusting screws in end grain. We've all done it. You need to attach something to the end of a board, so you drive screws straight into the end grain and hope for the best. End grain holds screws terribly. The fibers just spread apart under load. A mortise and tenon joint eliminates this entirely because the tenon presents long grain to the mortise walls, and the load is carried in compression and shear across the grain, not by screws pulling against it. The third pattern is overbuilding with metal instead of fitting joints properly. I've seen workbenches with more steel than a car chassis, and they still wobble because none of the wood-to-wood surfaces were actually fitted. All that metal is just clamping loose joints together. If the joints fit properly in the first place, you don't need the metal, period. The fourth pattern is treating wood movement as a problem to fight rather than a force to use. Every bracket is an attempt to hold wood still. Traditional joinery accepts that wood moves and designs the joint so that movement makes it better, not worse. The good news is, once you see these patterns for what they are, you can start shifting your approach one project at a time. You don't have to throw away every bracket in your shop. Just start asking yourself, before you reach for the hardware, whether a fitted joint would actually serve you better. Now, for that bonus tip I promised at the beginning. This is a marking technique I learned from watching a timber framer in Vermont, and it's so simple, I felt a little foolish for not figuring it out on my own. When you're fitting a tenon into a mortise, the most important thing is full contact across the cheeks of the joint. That's where your load-bearing surface area lives. But it's hard to see where your tenon is actually touching and where it's gapped. Here's what he did. He rubbed a thin layer of chalk, just regular sidewalk chalk, across both cheeks of the tenon. Then he inserted the tenon into the mortise, pressed it home, and pulled it back out. Everywhere the chalk had transferred to the mortise walls, the surfaces were making contact. Everywhere the mortise was still clean, there was a gap. He'd pare the high spots on the tenon with a wide chisel, re-chalk, and test again. 3 or 4 rounds of this, and he had a tenon that was making contact across 95% or more of its surface area. I started using this method about 4 years ago, and the difference in joint quality was immediate. My tenons went from fitting okay to fitting perfectly, and the joints were noticeably stiffer right off the bench. It takes an extra 10 minutes per joint, and it's worth every second. One more thing before I let you go. I spent a long time gathering the best ancient Eastern woodworking methods I have come across, and I put them all into a book called Kenji's Workshop. 100 techniques that most modern woodworkers have never seen, with step-by-step photos and clear explanations you can actually follow in your shop. Scan the QR code on screen right now, or grab it from the first link in the description. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next one.